Steve Kelly.
All right. I think I did that correctly. Yay.
Look good here.
Nice. Oh, Steve, thank you so much for joining today. I really appreciate it. You and I think have connected online, probably Instagram, social media for a while now.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've been a fan of your work for a number of years. And I know you've got some cool stuff going on. So I thought this would be a great opportunity to dig in a little bit. First, let me ask you, are you joining from New Orleans today? How's everything down there?
I am in New Orleans at home.
Oh,
Uptown.
Okay. Uptown. All right. Well, how's things down there? How's the summer been?
They've been good. Hot.
Mm-hmm.
We're not getting a ton of relief, but that's the nature of the business here. It's kind of how it goes. It's been great. For me, at least, it's been a pretty busy summer. Wrapped up recording of this record in May. And have just been kind of going nonstop, mixing, mastering, getting the artwork, getting all the promo together, all the branding, all the stuff that like is no fun but it's you have to do it, and it's but it's been good. It's been it's always nice when you have something to work on that really like inspires you, and you're not doing it out of obligation. You're not like, oh, I've got to do this. It's like, okay, no, this is cool. I really like this. Yeah.
Awesome.
But it's been good. Yeah.
Well, that's fantastic. And I made my inaugural Jazz Fest trip this year. Finally.
Nice.
After a couple false starts, it was everything I thought it was going to be. I'm really excited, at some point to go back when it's more of a, business as usual kind of situation. Although for a place like that, I'm not even sure if that applies as a phrase. It may not.
It does. It's funny because, a lot of people will visit and they'll visit during Mardi Gras or Jazz Fest, and they're like, how do y'all do this? Like, is it always, it's like, it's not always like this. It's like, we do this because y'all are in town. Like, this is, but there are definitely times where it's not super insane. And I highly encourage anyone who's curious about the city or wants to visit, or, I encourage people to come in the off season or around times that aren't, super peak tourist times, because it really is a magical place. And it's pretty cool to be able to go in and explore it without having, an itinerary or an agenda of like, well, we got to do this. We got to go see this. We got to go see this. We don't have enough time. You can actually just kind of come in and enjoy the city, take in the restaurants, take in some music, and just kind of fall in love with it.
I love it. And, I grew up very close to New York City, actually kind of equidistant between New York and Philadelphia. And so kind of just understanding the push and pull sometimes of, of what that daily life is like in a place where there's just always so much happening. It is amazing, especially when you live somewhere like that. You find your own places. And I always felt like when I lived, in New York, it was so much quieter and beautiful and lovely than I would have ever imagined if I hadn't had that experience. So I kind of get where you're coming from.
I mean, one of my absolute favorite things about the city is that, I can walk out my front door and am a couple of blocks away from all the bars, restaurants, bank, pharmacy, bakery, ice cream parlor. I mean, like everything, and similar to New York in that way, that it's pretty much everything you need is in your neighborhood. And it's not, a suburban sprawl where you've got to drive 30, 45 minutes just to go to the grocery or do anything like that. It's very community focused, and every everything you need, and everyone you know is kind of, well, not everyone you know, but to an extent, everything's kind of within a small small area. It's I don't know, it's just kind of cozy to me.
I love it. And then, so thinking about community, I always love to find out, wherever people are based, for you and your experience, what is the New Orleans music community like in terms of support, camaraderie? How would you describe your experiences as being a part of that?
Honestly, and I'm biased, I would say that the music community in New Orleans is second to none. And the community at large, inside just the music community, it's been a complete blessing. I moved here in 2003, and really not knowing much of anything at all, and the number of times that it either happened to me directly or I saw it happen with someone else, where established, venerable musicians, like icons of the scene, are just hanging out and are willing to like share information and experiences and tips and tricks and things like that with the coming generations. Where like you don't see that in a lot of places. A lot of and I'm not naming any cities by name, but a lot of other places are very competitive. There's a finite amount of bandwidth for creative endeavors, and to an extent, if you've gotten your foot in the door, you're not going to leave room for anyone else because they might take it away from you. And that I don't really see that happening in New Orleans, and that makes me cherish this place, because it really is a sense of a rising tide lifts all ships. Like when a New Orleans musician kind of blows up and gets some national prominence, it's not like in some places where all the haters come out and it's like, let's go, like everyone's on the same team and we're all pulling for each other. And then the community at large, New Orleans is one of the last places in the country where you can pursue art as a career and be fulfilled with it, and it's the kind of place that even like huge law firms and businesses downtown will close at noon so that all their employees can go out to Jazz Fest. And it's the kind of place where even people who aren't like rabid music fans still appreciate it and still respect it and are still still admire people for pursuing that kind of thing. And it's just a really special place in my opinion.
That's one of the best descriptions I think I've heard of New Orleans. And I live in Denver. I live in a city that is also extremely supportive, and I think tends to be a great community for music. But I even think that's different, and not in a bad way. I think what you just said about that respect for choosing this path, and that even people who aren't necessarily wouldn't consider themselves huge music fans, still have so much respect for the art form and what it is, and that permeates all these different levels of society and culture. To me, that is singular in a way, and so unique.
Well, it's not to get philosophical on it, but in American society, which is capitalist by nature, we tend to put value on things that make money, and only put value on things that make money. And so being in a place where the value isn't attached to the financial aspect of it, but just the merits of what it is on its own, I just love that.
Yeah, I do too. And so let's talk about your work, or
All right.
I want to talk about this release you have coming out in a couple weeks, I believe.
Yeah.
Is that right? Yeah. And so yeah, let's chat about that. Here's the Thing is the name of the album. How did that come to be? I'd love to know the process and what you would like us to know as listeners and fans ahead of that release.
Oh man, it's been an awesome project, and for several reasons. You know, from a personal standpoint, it's something that I started writing during the pandemic. And it was a project. The project has really kind of like grown and expanded. It started just because I had something to say and had a few songs in my head, and had the opportunity, because of the pandemic and everything was shut down, I had the opportunity to work with some of my favorite friends and musicians who would normally be on the road touring or and they were in town and had a lot of free time. And so it was really great to be able to develop this material and get it out there. But it was really special because of all the people who were able to be involved in the process. This very much was a project that just kind of snowballed and kind of took on a life of its own, where it started off as a 3-track EP. I just had a couple of songs, that I had written and had recorded. And then I wrote a couple more, and it was a 5-track EP. And then I was, I've got a few more, and it's a full length. And so I started writing, I want to say the first session was around August of 2020. Mm-hmm. And it was very much I'm someone who loves the collaborative process. For me, the real secret in the at least for my process, mm-hmm. And it sounds kind of cliche, but whatever, it's the truth. So, letting go of ego is maybe in my opinion, the greatest thing you can do in any kind of creative endeavor. Letting go of, well, this is what I want, or this is what I think it should be, or this is what it's supposed to be. And just kind of sitting back and letting the art develop as it really wants to, and doing it without, really like steering it with a heavy hand, that's where the magic comes in for me. And one of my favorite things in the world is just bouncing ideas off of people, whether it's a conversation like this, whether it's playing live and having a musical conversation, or whether it's in the studio and just tossing ideas around. And that was, for this project, one of my favorite parts was that almost every session, almost every song features entirely different musicians. There are a lot of folks who are on several tracks, but I don't know. I mean, there's maybe only 2 songs that were like the same group of musicians both times. And just having all those different voices be able to come into the studio and feel respected and seen enough to want to contribute ideas, and so I would bring in an idea. Hey, this is kind of like what I'm thinking for the verse. This is kind of what I'm thinking for the chorus. This is kind of the vibe. what do you think? How does it hit you? And then seeing the ideas that would come back from that. And then, you know, one of my like major driving like goals of this whole record was just follow the ideas, follow the good ideas. Doesn't matter who came up with them. Doesn't matter, you know, but if that's a better idea, we're following that, you know? And so to be able to have these sessions with some of the most incredible musicians in the country and by default in the world, who were all able to leave their ego aside. And it's not about, I need to get my part in the song. It's not about, I need to get, it's just, this is a cool idea. What do you think? And really just following that path every time, from where I'm sitting, it led us to a pretty special place. And the musicians who took part of this record, I'm completely in awe of, and am ridiculously lucky to get to have worked with, and ridiculously lucky to be able to call friends, you know? So that's the like technical side of things. From an inspirational standpoint, all of these songs were inspired by the same person. And it, you know, as a songwriter, it's, you know, you go through your peaks and your valleys of creativity, of I'm inspired. I've hit writer's block. I can't write anything. I'll never write anything again, you know? And I was fortunate enough to meet someone who just constantly inspires me. And it wasn't, I didn't set out to write her a love letter. But I think that's kind of what ended up happening. It was just more ideas and more ideas, and things just kind of kept coming out. And again, you know, part of putting your ego aside is not thinking about it too much and just letting it go and taking it as it comes, and then worrying about it all later. You know, I definitely at times in the past have been way too guilty about self-editing and editing too quickly and oh no, that's not any good. And this was really a situation where it's just ideas. And then you've got so many of them that naturally the best are going to rise to the top. And, you know, and as a songwriter, it's also challenging to, I mean, there's the inspirational side of it of, you know, what the heart is trying to say, but then there's also the craft side of it, the science of songwriting and being able to really have both sides of that fulfilled. You know, for me, there's nothing better out there. I mean, that's what I'm going for.
Yeah, I mean, it's a beautiful thing, and I think that I don't think it's cliche, in my opinion, at all, to talk about ego. I think that that's actually something that can be really difficult to try to work around, or maybe just accept that we all have that. And then what do you do to kind of, you know, embrace it, and at the same time, like you're saying, trust others and trust that your instincts are kind of what's going to be the thing that needs to happen. And so that's the theme that I'm kind of picking up from what you were just saying, is trust. These collaborators, friends, you know, others that are instrumental, even trusting a thematic voice in a recording is its own form. I'd love to know a little bit about who is on this album with you, and who helped make all this awesome music.
Oh man. Okay. Well, that's going to take a minute. It's
we're good.
And I want to give all of these people their credit and their due, because there was just so much just beautiful energy and selflessness and generosity, just given, just time and time again. I have to start with mentioning Robert Mercurio from Galactic, who's producing the record. He is just brilliant when it comes to bringing out the best in me. He's got a ridiculous talent for pushing you and making you realize that you're capable of more without ever turning the direction negative or saying, no, that's no good, or no. It's just like, that's cool. I think this little section can be better. I mean, and he does such a great job of working with so many different personalities. I really couldn't have done any of this without him. I also have to give a huge shout out and thanks to Gabriel Cavassa, who is, in my estimation, one of the greatest singers in the country. She is currently on tour with Joshua Redman and is recently on a record with him that is doing very well and is just beautiful. And I'm not what you would call a natural singer. And I have wrestled with my voice for a long time. And I knew I wanted to be better. And so I went to her and was just like, please mold me, anything you can do to make any kind of improvements. And she and I spent months and months working on stuff. And she had such I'm still not, the world's greatest singer, but she helped me get this stuff to a place where it was presentable in the best way. And I can't thank her enough. Now in terms of the musicians who were on the actual sessions, I mean, we've got, Kevin Scott, who is currently on tour with, I think right now he's out with Warren Haynes' band, but also with Government Mule, and phenomenal jazz player, bassist extraordinaire. Isaac Eady from the Jodeci Trucks band. Andrew Yanofsky from the Rumble, phenomenal songwriter, keyboard player. A lot of the guys from Naughty Professor here in town, Nick Elman and Ian Bowman and John Culbreth were the horn section on How Are We Here Again, and did a phenomenal job there. And then there, Noah Young, Bill Daniel, who is one of my songwriting partners in this whole thing. Sam Shaheen, Scott Graves, Sam Cuslin. Did I say Sam Cuslin yet? Harry Mortar, Sage Rouge, Chris Mill. I mean, Ari Cohn. So many. Lee Yankee, Owen Finley, Rob Mercurio, Stanton Moore makes an appearance. Honestly, and I feel really bad right now because I know I'm leaving people out. I have a list of all of the stuff that I really need to have in front of me to be able to really articulate everyone that played a part in it.
Yeah. We'll be sharing, and make sure we get that.
For sure.
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah. But I think, as you're going through this, really incredible list of just amazing artists, what I'm thinking about is, so you have people kind of popping in and out on different tracks, some done one, others multiple. Were you looking to try to keep a similar feel to each track, or do you look at this almost like it's all going to come together around the theme, around the songwriting? How does that work?
That's a great question. It's a very fine line. to be honest. It's a fine line between allowing the art to develop as it wants and letting the song be what it really wants to be, versus steering the ship and trying to get it where you want it. And, I think that I definitely knew going into it that the collaborative environment was what I wanted. Looking back at, some of the old like Steely Dan records where it's really just two guys and then they've just got musician after musician after musician coming in and just contributing these amazing ideas. I knew I wanted it to be collaborative. I'll say this. I didn't have an end goal in mind. I wasn't like, it needs to sound like this. We had a few like guiding principles for the record. I talked about that earlier, where, just follow the ideas is one of them. The other one was just, don't worry about what it's going to be. Worry about how you're getting there. And if, one of the guiding principles was just be honest and be genuine. Don't try and be something we're not, or I'm not, or, and so really just kind of using those as guidelines. It was more about choosing options or making choices based on that, as opposed to where it was going to get us. Is this me? Does this really seem genuine, or does that seem like I'm trying a little too hard, or I'm trying to be something I'm not? And I got to give it to, people like Rob and Gabby both were instrumental in, okay, no, that's you. Well, I don't know if that's you, and helped me really kind of but just grow into the confidence of really understanding, no, that is, or no, that's not,
Sure.
Yeah,
it makes sense. And as you're talking, I'm thinking I probably revealed the era in which, or generation in which, I came up really listening to music, because even the concept of an album, I still listen to albums front to back all the time, over and over again. The reality is that isn't how a lot of people are consuming music anymore. So the idea that you kind of have to have, or should always have this, front to back kind of storyline, which you do have, I think is a little bit different in 2024, in the era of, releasing singles on a regular basis, and just how, even listening suggestions pop up to people. And so that question was probably something that someone born, 10 or 15 years after I was, may not even be thinking about. But I appreciate what you're saying, and kind of saying, well, here's the things we are going to keep true to, and the other pieces are going to fall where they need to fall.
Yeah, I've had that conversation with a couple of artists recently, because I very much, am looking at this. I understand how we've gotten to the place of, just put out singles, constantly have content. And then, okay, maybe it's a collection. All right, records out next, I get it, but I don't know that there's just like, as a, growing up in the 80s and 90s, I remember like the record came out and then the artist put out singles from that record for the next couple of years. And, I was a huge, some of my favorite artists of all time have always been album driven kind of, Prince, Pink Floyd, D'Angelo, Radiohead, things like that. that's the kind of thing that you can just hit play on and sit back and listen to the whole thing. And I wanted with this release, I wanted to do something similar. I wanted to kind of pay homage to all of my influences, both creatively, but also from a marketing standpoint. Like, I want to take it back. I want to, help maybe kind of steer a new direction of like, hey, no, look, we're putting out our whole package. And then I'm so proud of this package that I'm going to release parts of it over the next couple of years, like just keeping it. And I grew up on music videos. And one thing I really want to do with this is to release videos of this stuff, like you would releasing singles. I mean, it's a little different these days because, terrestrial radio isn't really, as prominent as it used to be, or isn't the only way people are able to like digest, new music. And so it's, on one hand, it's great because it allows people to find what they like and latch onto it, as opposed to being spoon fed, this is what you're supposed to like. Mm-hmm. I'm really excited to get it out there and then keep putting energy and effort into the creative side of things through the visual components. That's, all those bands that I just listed are, in addition to being amazing musicians and phenomenal, writers and performers, they're also very theatrical with what they do. And the visual element wasn't necessarily secondary. It was an integral part of all the music being made. We've kind of gotten away from that to an extent. And I don't know whether it works or not. It's something I'm into, and it's something I'm going to do. So We'll see how it goes.
Well, and you're right. All those, artists and so many others, I think, like you said, it was just simply a part of who they were, and that was their expression right there alongside the music. Now, I know you've got the release party happening on the 23rd. Mm-hmm. Do you want to talk a little bit about kind of your plans for the night, what you're kind of thinking?
Oh, man. Yeah, it's going to be great. Tipitina's does, they're a great music venue. For anybody who's not aware, it's one of the last really phenomenal music venues in the world, where they just, in addition to bringing in the best talent from locally and nationally and everything in between, they also do a really beautiful job of supporting and nurturing and developing local artists. And one of the things they started doing years ago was summers in New Orleans traditionally pretty slow, and in order to combat that and still really be able to accentuate local artists, they started doing a Free Fridays series. And they've been doing it for, I don't know, maybe over a decade at this point. But it's great because it's a free show. Everybody comes out. It's always a great crowd, and it's a blast. And it just so happened that this year I was scheduled to do one of these, and it coincided with the album release perfectly. And again, I'm very fortunate that a lot of the artists from the record are going to be able to be in town and actually be able to come perform at the show. And so we've got a bunch of special guests coming, and it's basically as many people from the record as possible are going to come in and be there. And we're going to play we're going to play all the new stuff. We're going to play a few other things that are also fun. And we've been working on this particular show for a month or so already. So I'm really looking forward to it.
Amazing. And you've done some other really cool stuff there too. If I remember correctly, at one point you have been doing something around the Talking Heads catalog. Can you just share a little bit about that? Because I've followed this and I just thought it was super interesting what you've done.
Yeah, no, it's a really, really fun project called Chop Making Sense. Chop Atula, Tipatina is on Chop anyway. And that was a situation, and this kind of again speaks to the music community in New Orleans, because that was a situation where I got a phone call a few years ago from Dougie at the Maple Leaf, and the Maple Leaf is, again, for anyone out there who might be unfamiliar with it, the Maple Leaf is one of the last really just great music venues in the world. And Dougie hit me up and was like, hey, we're doing this Mardi Gras party, and we had something lined up. It didn't work out. We really are looking for something specific. Would you be up for putting together a Talking Heads tribute? And I had done a couple other tribute shows earlier in town, that kind of thing. But I said, of course, that'd be a blast. And so I called, a handful of musicians, and we put it together. And the initial show was a huge success, a lot of fun. Tips caught wind of it and brought us on over there, and we've been doing the show over there, once a year for the last couple of years, or 3 or 4 years. Hey, buddy. That's a really, really great project because Talking Heads is one of those bands that the people who know about them and are into them are like, they're amazing. But there's still a blind spot for a lot of people, and a lot of, especially here in town, a lot of jazz artists who, people who come and go to school for jazz performance, and maybe they're not. I mean, they might know Burning Down the House, or they've known but they've never really done a deep dive on the material. And so being able to take these phenomenal musicians from various walks of life and various genres and putting them all together, and then learning this really intricate and complex yet also really accessible pop music, it's just been cool. And it's so cool to watch people's faces light up when they are like, man, I never thought that this was this cool. And you get that in the crowd too, where it's people come because, all right, the people are talking about it, let's go see it. Or they want to hear a song or two that they know. But then they get there and they're like, oh, wait, this is Talking Heads too? Oh, I know this song. Oh, I love this. And it's not often that you can just basically throw a party with all of your friends and just have fun, and that show is certainly, Rob Kellner, who is one of the keyboard players in that band, even said that on stage this year. He's like, this is an opportunity. And he, Rob is that dude. I mean, he plays with everybody. Had a phenomenal band here in town called Miss Mojo. He tours with Tank and the Bangas. He is a phenomenal musician by all accounts. And to see him really appreciate this music for a lot of the same reasons I do, that it allows us to be complex and esoterical, but also being able to stretch out and improvise and get weird with it, for lack of a better term. it's rare when the music can scratch a lot of itches all at the same time. And this is one project that does that. It's a lot of fun.
I'm sure it's so much fun. And what you were just talking about reminded me of one of my favorite books, which is Songwriters on Songwriting. It's kind of, I don't know if it's outdated now. I wouldn't call it that. I think it's completely timeless. But, Frank Zappa was in there. I think Paul Zola was the author.
Cool.
And, he had these kind of sit-down chats with a lot of songwriters, and David Byrne was one of them. And there's this amazing metaphor that David had about songwriting. And it was basically, in his opinion at the time anyway, it was, songwriting's like getting on a bus. If you're not at the bus stop, it's never gonna come by. And so you have to just put yourself in that situation at some point every day, so that the song's gonna come by you. And whether it's random phrases, gibberish, whatever, it doesn't matter. You just have to do that. And I think sometimes, for whatever reason, people sometimes seem surprised at maybe how seriously or how dedicated somebody like David Byrne was and is to his craft. And I think that speaks to the ability to kind of promote fun and joy and zaniness and silliness, which is in itself an amazing thing, especially these days. Like, I want as much of that as possible, and still be really dedicated to doing whatever it is you need to do personally to make that happen, to be able to do it, right? Both those things can definitely be true.
I completely agree. And David Byrne, was a huge influence on my songwriting for Here's the Thing. Not in the sense that I was, trying to sound like him, but more that, as musicians, you start off learning an instrument and it's difficult, and then you do it again and again and it gets easier. And then you repeat that process hundreds and thousands of times over the, and so we get to this point where we equate quality with doing something difficult, or if it's hard, then it's cool. And David Byrne and Talking Heads and several other artists, but one of the things that I really gleaned from Talking Heads and that project was, things don't have to be super difficult to be cool. They can just be cool, and they can be simple. And it's, the real beauty is finding the genius in the simplicity, finding the slight variation that makes this piece cool, or the lyric that is completely digestible. Exactly every word that just got said, and it's you're not like having to break out a thesaurus or a dictionary to figure it out. But the lyrics are being arranged and presented in a way that really makes you sit back and think, like, oh, that's that. And musically too. Sometimes you can just take a simple groove and do it. I mean, look at Naive Melody. This Must Be the Place. It's the same thing the whole time. They just add and take away and use dynamics and melodic changes and harmonies. And there's so much brilliance in there without having to be overcomplicated or crazy busy or and I love it.
Super cool. Yeah. And I promise I won't take us down like a totally like nerdy path, but like the psychology of repetition, legitimizing whatever it is in a song, even if something's super complex, that's a real thing, and it connects people and it grounds them in whatever it is they're listening to, so they can, I think, better absorb whatever it is that's coming their way. And I think some artists just had a knack for doing that in whichever pattern or form kind of spoke to them. And I think that that's something that we don't always, and maybe we shouldn't recognize it outright when we're listening to music, but it's there when you really sit back and say, okay, like, what's the thing?
I mean, the reality is what you're describing has been a part of music since music started. look at classical music. Themes are a huge, you introduce the theme, you go away from it, you bring it back, and for me, it's kind of like blending the worlds of, or towing the line of, approaching it from an emotional standpoint versus the academic or scientific approach. And so when you say things like, just repeating something over and over, there's value to that. And then the knowing when to take what you've repeated and do it slightly differently, or do something drastically differently, and then come back to it, and being able to take the simple and apply the science to it to elicit an emotional reaction or response. I don't know. At least that's the goal. I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm, who knows if it actually will get there or land, but that's the goal. Mm-hmm. And I don't know. It's just super cool. I mean, just to be able to do something simple and then change it a little bit and then bring it back, or to actually affect people on an emotional level. Yeah. Man, that's powerful.
It is powerful. And I am not a musician. Don't be fooled by what's behind me. I'm not a musician at all. That's just not, especially performing, that is not something I've ever really been able to get into doing for one reason or another. So the appreciation I have for when I feel that, and have for many decades just wanted to know, well, what is doing that? That's like a never ending quest, for me. And I find it in so many amazing places, and I kind of need it. It's like a drug of choice, all the time. And so I really, really appreciate what you're sharing. There's totally off topic, but there's an article I want to send you. So there was a study done, I think within the last year. It was a legitimate, research design that studied what it is that music listeners find pleasing. Is it the kind of traditional Western music, formulaic type of thing? What else, if you kind of broaden your look elsewhere, internationally, like, what does that look like? And really, really cool stuff as to what are our notions of beauty in music, and what does that mean? Because as we know, there are places around the world where they're not working with the same scales and tonalities as we do. It's completely different, and like our different ears picking up on different things. Anyway, sorry, that's a totally tangent.
I will go down that wormhole with you by all means. Let me ask you, first of all, over your shoulder, is that a picture of Mick Jagger?
It is. That's my.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought so. Hey, look, that's the perfect example. I mean, the Rolling Stones, no one will disagree that they've probably done every drug under the sun.
Right.
But the fact that music is the one that keeps them coming back. Like, they've been able to quit all the other ones. That feeling of performing and connecting with someone. And again, Rolling Stones, they kept it pretty simple. They kept it between the mayo and the mustard and right down the fairway, but they did it brilliantly, and they continue to do it brilliantly. I mean, they saw them at Jazz Fest this year. They were amazing. And the fact that, Mick's 80 years old out there, just, that's not possible without the drug that is music. And there's not a better drug on the planet, in my opinion. I mean, music's the inherent musical language. It's something that speaks to all of us, innately in different ways. But being able to connect with people non-verbally or without having a direct conversation in the traditional sense, I should say. Sure. That's just really powerful. You're connecting with people on ideas and not on words. And I think that is a stronger bond,
Mhm.
and that's a really powerful thing.
Yeah, yeah, totally. I just got chills thinking about it. I will mention that I utilized that photo that in the frame back there, similar to the way that I've heard football players at Notre Dame do with the gold football helmet, where they like tap it on their way out the door for like, for fun, for love, like, oh, we're gonna go get it. So I work from home and I have for a long time. So I'm in this room a lot, and so when I go into the real world, make is my last vantage point to be like, I can do this. Look at him swaggering away, wearing probably a women's blazer and crushing it. Like, that's all I need to know.
I will say and that's a small bit of kismet too, just because the woman who was the inspiration for the songs on Here's the Thing is a massive Rolling Stones fan. I don't know if I've met a bigger one. And as such, there are Rolling Stones references sprinkled in this record in a few spots. And I don't want to give away all the Easter eggs, but yeah, I mean, there are the Rolling Stones are another one of those influences on this record. Not because I was like, I need to write something like Keith. It's just that's the nature of where I was.
Absolutely. I think it's amazing. And so if we, thinking about the album, when it is released, where can people find it? Where should people go to support you? And how can people be supporting you and your work?
Well, I will say this. It will be available on August 23rd on all major streaming platforms. And so I would encourage listeners to listen on their platform of choice. Now, there are obviously platforms that are better or worse for supporting musicians. That's a whole other, ball of wax. If you really want to support and are dying to support, I will have the record for sale on my website, stevekelly.io. In the near future. And just a complete aside, like streaming's great because you can just pull up whatever, whenever, and that's fine. But if you really want to support artists, buy stuff directly from them, buy their music from them, buy their merch from them, pay a ticket to go to their show. That's how it is working these days.
Right on. Yeah. As directly as possible. I'm so glad you mentioned that. That is so true. And it really does help and make a difference. Plus, then you get to see, or an artist would get to see in a more direct, personal way, the love. And I think that's really key too. So I appreciate that. Is there anything that I haven't asked you about or that we haven't talked about that you'd want to make sure we get into today?
No, I feel like we've had a pretty great chat. I really appreciate you. I appreciate anyone who gives a shit one way or another about music, about me, about the music I'm making, for sure. Like I'm saying, it's the greatest drug out there to be able to do this, and not just live. I mean, but like being in the studio and just like ideas flying like that. And it requires people like you who appreciate it and champion it and bring attention to it. And so I just want to say thank you for having me on and for doing what you're doing. You're fighting the good fight, and
thanks.
Bless you for that.
It is definitely the thing that keeps me, and I know Kevin's not here today, but keeps us going in so many ways to be able to do this. And it makes us so happy to just be able to talk and geek out and just share. So definitely goes both ways. Steve, I'll say thank you. And also, in the future, when you have anything else coming up that you'd want to talk about, please come back so we can do this again. Awesome.
Certainly will.
All right. Well, stick around for just a second. I'm going to take us out here for an outro. And for everybody listening, Kevin will be really proud of me when I say make sure to like and subscribe and do all the things that you're supposed to do. So forget to say that, just like I forget to take pictures everywhere. Yeah, just make sure, make sure you're doing that.
I get it.
Steve, hang out there for just a sec, and we'll be right back.